Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach and welcome to another player profile. And just off the top, thanks to all the subscribers who have jumped on board in the last few weeks. Probably about 40 new subs in the last couple of weeks, which I've really been rapt to see. So if you're new to the scene, thanks for getting involved. And whether that was off the back of me, a bit of a quest to get to 1,000 due to the monetisation rules that I discussed in the Brayshaw video, or if it was just naturally getting involved by way of seeing my stuff for the first time. Either way, thank you, and as always to the guys who have been involved. Subs for some time, much appreciated. But we're going to take a look at Nat Fyfe today, and Fyfe is back, there's no doubt about that. I think certain stages throughout his career we've been concerned with that body and whether we'd ever see his very best football return, and thankfully we did see quite a bit of it last season, but it probably didn't benefit us as much as we had have hoped. This time last year, Fyfe was an absolute lock. Obviously only averaged 105.4 in 2016 after 5 games. Everyone was going with him in his side, but he didn't exactly set the world on fire from the very start, which saw a lot of coaches, myself included, trade him out by mid-year and then miss a lot of his great stuff. I'll run through that in a second, but we all know how good Fyfe is. Since 2011, he's always been over the 100 mark, except for 2012, where it was 93.2, 108 in 2011, 106.5, 2013. Then the 2 big years, 122.3 and 124.3 in 2014 and 15. That was really his very best stuff. Contested ball beast, clearance king, can kick the goals, take the mark in the air. That's exact recipe for huge points, and that's what his game is so good at. And it's no surprise that he is capable of those 120 pluses. That 2016 season I mentioned, and last year worked his way back to 108.8. Now, we all know what's so good about Fyfe. As I just said, he's a dynamic player, a match winner in the air, on the ground, in the midfield or up forward. He can find a way to scoring big time points, but it has been the concern over his body. Of course, we saw him with the fractured leg, and that was extremely concerning. Question marks over whether he would ever be able to get back to his best physically. I think many people thought, of course, we'd see some great football from Fyfe, but were those huge elite numbers behind him? Of course, he does have such an explosive game. He had so many troubles with that leg, and the talk out of the West was that this was complicated and, concern of re-injuring and not only just getting back out in the park consistently, but then again, do we ever see their best footy? I mean, we've seen many fellas across the journey get an injury, and when you look back at their career, that was their best football we ever saw pre-injury. Post-injury, you see some great stuff, but it's never quite to the lofty heights that you see it before the injury, which is sad. But thankfully, that was put to rest in the latter stages of last season, and certainly in the International Rules Series, very much so put to rest. Of course, we're not picking a bloke on how he kicks a round ball, but physically, he looked like a beast, which was extremely encouraging. Now, I want to take a look at the 2 parts of his season that was extremely interesting, I felt. Now, like many of you, as I said, I would have started with Fyfe, and he started well. 5 tons, not huge tons, but he started with 5 centuries. And rounds 1 to 12, he did start to drift off. Now, did start well with the 5 tons, but then we just saw him, 90s and 80s and shallow hundreds, which saw him average just 99.3 across the first 12 rounds. Now, it had people like myself going, this isn't in the bargaining, it wasn't what we signed on for with Fyfe. We're expecting, maybe a slow start at times as he works his way back, but where's the 110 stuff? Where's the Fyfe we know? And then he, of course, came to light that he was having some chest problems, sternum trouble. He withdrew against the Cats in June some stage, so he missed a couple of games there, and of course, you naturally trade him out. It was quite a simple decision at the time. I mean, we thought he was going to be a keeper. Didn't turn out to be, and I think most people were umming and ahhing about trading him on form. And then, of course, when it did arise that, Fyfe's been struggling with this and with that, and he hasn't been 100%, he's been battling through, then all of a sudden it started to make sense. And, of course, it's a no-brainer to trade him out. And all of a sudden, again, the concerns of, is Fyfe just a wounded warrior that is never going to get a good crack at it over the course of a season? But then he returned, and with many people, you know, some may have got him back in the latter stages of the season because he was quite cheap, but I'm sure most traded him out. You know, he wouldn't have had too much patience at that stage. But returned round 15, just the 84 points. But then it's round 16 to 23 that was massive. He returned to his very best. 126 points he averaged across those 8 games. Lowest score of 93, 120 plus on 6 occasions. Now, that's what we know. That's what we saw across the whole season of 2014 and 2015. Big scores, big tons, and doing it at an unbelievable level of consistency. So that really gives us massive incentive to pick Fyfe. And he is one of the most popular players already this pre-season. And it comes as no surprise. You know, he's at 597k. The body looks to be going well. There's always a concern physically. I mean, Fyfe is now in a category where he's had a number of injuries. Sometimes they've reoccurred. It is always a slight risk. But in this case, there's generally with most players, there's some form of risk in form, consistency, or their body. There's always some sort of risk. And generally, it's weighing up the potential reward and value. And I think Fyfe, at a touch under 600k, I think that's pretty reasonable price for what he's capable of. And the fact that we've seen him produce it in a small sample size, showing us once again he's capable of his very, very best last season. And then the IRS really did just put that stamp of approval on top that he's flying physically, and I haven't heard anything otherwise so far throughout the pre-season. So it will be good to hopefully see a Fyfe in full flight throughout the pre-season. And if that's the case, we'll be picking him. There's no doubt about it. I think the fact that he has shown what he can do once again at the latter stage of last season, it's an affordable price. And the bottom line is, if Fyfe is producing his best football, well, he's a top 5 player in the comp, whether that's scoring or actual player. He's one of the very best out there, and you could mount a case that he'd be the top scorer for the whole competition if he was fully flying. I mean, he, Martin, Dangerfield, they're the sort of guys that you think of, and they're all capable of going those big numbers. Of course, Gaz in his prime as well. So clearly it's a no-brainer if he's fit. We're not breaking the bank. We've got faith that he can still score at that level. And again, I say it once more, if the body's fine, which at this point in time it is, he'll quite simply be a lock. So let me know your thoughts. It'd be interesting to see if there's any differing views out there. I'd be surprised if there were too many who didn't have him either in the side or in strong calculations. So by all means, give me your point of view on Fyfe. And we are clicking well and truly into footy season now. The tennis is done, and we will be really ramping it up in terms of SuperCoach pre-season, but as well starting to whet the appetite for the footy season that is very, very close now that we really look at it. It'll come up very quick. So again, thanks for tuning in. Keep subscribing away. Like the video. Give us a comment. That'd be great. And I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.